Because you as an engineer, you need something to be like finite and complete.
Yeah.
Where there's just that doesn't exist in this world. So I can't comprehend it any better than you can. You don't drink coffee. You're a tea drinker. So I want to ask
Correct.
I won't ask you how do you like your coffee. I'll ask you how do you like your tea.
Well, I have been a coffee drinker. So I
Did you drink on the ISS?
Yeah, I drank coffee on the space station. Yeah.
Did you call it rocket fuel?
Here, you can't mix sugar and milk without a cup and gravity. So all of your coffee is pre-bagged.
Yeah.
So if you want a black coffee, you gotta go, no. Oh yeah, there's a black coffee. And the main coffee we get is Hawaiian, Kona coffee. But made a deal with Tim Hortons. And Tim Hortons provided coffee for us while we were up there.
That's a Canadian special.
It is. And the Russians were like, oh, good coffee. And in fact, they called everything else deputy coffee.
You don't really need too much of an introduction, but you have lots of titles, right? You're a retired astronaut.
Uh-huh.
You are a engineer. You're a pilot.
Yep.
You're a musician. Yep. You're a best-selling author.
Colonel.
You're a colonel.
Yeah.
And you are also an ardent Maple Leafs fan.
I am indeed a Maple Leafs fan. My great-grandfather was the trainer for the Leafs.
That's right.
In between the wars, late 30s, actually. And I only knew him when I was a kid. But, boy, when your great-grandpa was the trainer for the Leafs and you sit down to watch a game with your late great-grandmother,
totally.
Then that sets the bit for life.
How many days in total did you spend in space?
I think 166. I didn't count them, but I think about 166.
So, I've spent a career looking at Earth from space, but I've done it through a lens, and you've been able to do it with your own two eyes. What does that perspective give you that's just hard to glean from a camera?
It's really hard to anticipate and know where to look if you're looking through a camera. Like if you know for sure there was going to be an accident at this corner in 15 seconds, and you can anticipate that coming, you would grab and be ready for it and catch that transient moment. Right. Whereas a camera might just be taking a picture because, hey, this is a corner in Toronto, or it takes a picture every certain number of seconds. And so when you get good at looking at the world, you know where to look.
Yeah.
You know where, hey, the river's, the light's going to glint off this river. And it's just, suddenly you can see all of the Mississippi. Or suddenly there's this river in Brazil that looks like the Superman symbol.
Yeah.
If you know when to look for it. So you get better and better, almost like you're developing an intimacy with the world just because you know where to look and when, and you know what parts are going to be beautiful.
You took a ton of photography when you were up there.
45,000 pictures.
So you captured history. We're talking last night at dinner with another founder in the EO space. We said, project yourself 1,000 years forward. In 1,000 years, we're going to take for granted that we basically have a daily historical mapping of our entire planet.
Right.
So in the year 2500, if you want to know what the planet looked like in 2150,
at 3:00 on Thursday afternoon,
you're going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And that is something, that's like my contrarian view of something that I know and believe that many people have not thought of just because I'm deeply into space. But it's in our lifetime that we started that archive, right?
It's in my lifetime that all human space flights started.
Exactly.
When I was born, no one had ever flown in space. All this has happened in the time that I'm alive. And the self-awareness that comes from it is staggering.
We have this concept of pre-written history, pre-reported history.
Oh, yeah.
And I think in past our generation and in future years, they will look at this moment, its time, as being I don't even know what the word is yet, but there's a before and after when we were recording everything, including the Earth's surface on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's amazing.
To your point, millennia is out. So long as humanity continues to not embark on killing ourselves and destroying ourselves.
Don't melt everything. Well, here's a space thought for you, and maybe you've got a counterpoint to this. There are some orbits that decay quite rapidly, because there's particles. But there are some orbits that decay hardly at all, like if you go all the way out to geostationary, or if you put something at a Lagrange point where the pull from the Earth and the Sun and the Moon balance. So you put something there, it's just there forever.
Yeah.
There's nothing in any of those points that we didn't put there.
Exactly.
So I think that's a really strong indicator that we're as advanced as any civilization has ever been on Earth,
Totally.
because there's nothing at those places which are natural technological advantage places to put stuff over time. So given that, yeah, it's a small sample size, but I actually think it's a relevant short sample size because we're the most advanced intellect that this planet has ever created.
Yeah, I actually use, so that's a great argument. I don't have a counter to it because I actually use that point, the fact that we don't have existing objects in Lagrange or geo
Yeah.
as evidence, to some.
I thought of that. You thought of that? Oh, okay.
Oh, hey, great minds think alike. But it is so.
Nah, full seldom differ. Yeah.
I do think that's an excellent artifact or lack of an artifact to suggest that we are the first advanced society in this solar system at least.
Yeah.
Okay, now you're about to give a keynote on the dramatic decline in launch costs and what that means for the economics of commercial space. And I'm guessing Starship is probably a large component of that.
Yeah.
Why should average people care about Starship? What is it going to do for humanity as a whole?
Well, right now, every milligram is sacred to orbit just because the costs are so high per weight. But there's a point where it doesn't really, it's another 10 pounds.
Yeah.
That doesn't really matter because our scales got so much bigger. But if you just extrapolate from the utility that we get every day from what's already up there, just think about GPS satellites as an example. There's a constellation of a finite number of GPS satellites that have become so important to the level of civilization that we have, but they're expensive to put up and they're a long ways away. But if the cost comes down and you can suddenly start putting big stuff up there that doesn't have to go way up, so its orbit doesn't decay, you don't really care if its orbit decays quickly because you can launch another one fairly inexpensively. You can put things up there that previously used to be impractical. So looking at the world, mapping the world, looking in detail at the science and health of the world, putting tools up for us to communicate, putting tools up for us to navigate, for better understanding of the weather. Right now, everything is like this Swiss watch to put up there. And I think making it simple and inexpensive to regularly put large things up there, it's just like a whole new industry of what we can put into space. And there's going to be military secret uses of it. Yeah. And there's going to be lots of commercial positive uses of it, just like any other technology. And so I think it's a hugely enabling capability that we haven't had before. We don't know yet because the key, the door hasn't been really truly open. There are people working on it, but I think the challenge is going to be, okay, initially it's going to deploy heavy Starlink things in some of the early applications. Yep. But as soon as people see, wow, I can put that big thing up there for this price, maybe we'll have space beaming power. Maybe, we'll find some clever way to clean up the junk that's up there. It gives us a scale that opens up doors that haven't been opened to us yet.
And some of those big, heavy things are humans, right? And humans historically, as you know, have been expensive to put up into space.
Yeah, I know.
I think we both agree that the amount of people working and living in space over the next decade will probably grow exponentially. You had to work really hard, though. You had to train really hard to be able to do that. Do you see that as a limiting factor in going forward? Or do you, not everybody's going to be able to be a Chris Hadfield in order to go into space?
We shouldn't have to be.
Are the barriers to being able to live and work in space?
Everybody shouldn't have to be Wilbur or Orville Wright to go flying.
Right.
And what I think it was Wilbur just about died on one of the test flights. He had a bad crash.
Yes.
But it took early people who had a kind of a slightly crazy bent and also a huge risk tolerance to do something new. But I don't think the Wright brothers would have been mad that you can buy a ticket and fly this afternoon to Australia if you want in almost 100% safety. They would have gone, great, that was kind of our point.
Yes.
Was to lay the foundations to allow an increased human capability. Yes. And I see the same as spaceflight. My odds of dying in my first launch were 1 in 38. And most people don't want to take that risk.
No.
But if you fly on a Dragon right now, a SpaceX Dragon, the risk is much, much less than that, much, much safer.
Totally.
And with each flight, the technology gets simplified, proven, and safety levels go up. So to me, it's a natural process and extension, and I'm all for it.
Did you see yourself going on a commercial flight?
Maybe. I don't have any interest in just going for a ride.
Yes.
My experience has been so
Your
rich.
adventure's been
It's
already.
it's like if you were an F1 driver and you've won all the races and you're an F1 driver and someone says, "Hey, want to come for a ride in my whatever my Corvette?"
Yeah.
And I'm, well, okay, yeah, let's go for a ride. And they're like, "Hey, want to go for another ride?" Well, where are we going?
Doesn't really tickle like your safety,
yeah,
right?
where are we going?
Yeah.
And what's the purpose of it? And to me, space flight isn't just about the ride; it's about purpose.
So I'm imagining safe space flight to the moon is probably something interesting for you. It's got to be probably safe at this point. You're not at a point where you want to risk anymore. But
if someone came in and said, "Hey, we want you to be part of the team developing a space flight that is going to go land on the moon. It's going to be something to work on for the next 10 years of your life. At the end of it, you'll probably get to go to the moon." I'd sign up in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
But if they said, "Hey, we want you to go suborbital tomorrow afternoon," I'd go, "Yeah, maybe. But why don't you get someone else to do that who hasn't had the experience that I've had?" Because the incremental benefit for me is going to be almost zero.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Insightful. Thank you. One last fast question, a fun one. Will the Toronto Maple Leafs win the Stanley Cup next year?
They have a real good shot. We got to see what the new coach is actually like. He won the Stanley Cup with St. Louis, and they weren't a killer team, And so how much of that was just that bringing together of those players, but how much was his mindset that really got those guys through to the end? And I think that's what's been missing in Toronto. Loads of talent on the team, but you need not just a peacetime coach, but a wartime coach, and someone who can really get the guys ready for the playoffs. And hopefully, new guy's the guy.
Get past that first round.
That'd be good.
Chris, thanks for having coffee with me.
Thanks, James.
Appreciate it.
Nice to chat.